On a blustery winter's morning on the southern Victorian coast in 2014, Rory Wilson headed out for his regular ride with a group of mates.
The wind was really strong, and so I had my head down and was battling against the winds.
Rory didn't see the truck parked at the side of the road.
I actually felt my spinal cord break, let go.
I came home and there were multiple messages on my mobile phone to say, there's been a bad accident down at Port Arlington, can you get down here straight away?
Rory was airlifted to the Alfred Hospital.
I had a phone call from the hospital to say they had x-rayed his back and his spine was broken and it was an irreversible break.
Rory was transferred to the Austin Hospital, Victoria's only spinal unit and one of the leading stroke and neurological hospitals in Australia.
First day, he was in good spirits. He was aware that he was now paraplegic. The next day, he had already started to become a little bit less compass. He just wasn't making sense totally.
After a few days, Rory's family became concerned his condition was worsening. His son spoke to nurse Tim Griffin.
He told me that he had spoken to ICU staff and said that he was slurring his speech. He noted facial droop and essentially they didn't do anything. I was concerned that he'd had a stroke because they're the classic symptoms of a stroke.
Tim Griffin urgently paged a doctor suggesting Rory should have a CT scan, but the doctor disagreed. So instead, Tim started neurological observations. He was about to go on 5 days leave, so Tim requested that other staff continue the observations while he was away.
I went home and assumed they would be done.
Over the following days, Rory's family became even more worried.
His right arm was flailing around everywhere. He didn't remember what my name was.
How did you raise concerns?
I asked if they could possibly rescan his brain because of the swollen head that I'd observed and the fact that he'd now become a little bit less compos mentis.
Rory's confusion and delirium was noted in his records. Some doctors thought his pain medication might be the cause. On July 15, a physiotherapist and doctor noted Rory had lost feeling in his right cheek. The next morning, he was observed by staff to have severe right arm weakness.
When a stroke happens in hospital, the patient's in hospital for a reason, and that illness that they were admitted for can mimic stroke symptoms or it can make stroke symptoms very difficult to recognise.
Pauline Wilson was convinced something separate was going wrong with Rory's brain. She says she demanded further tests.
They assured me that they would take him for a brain scan the next day, so I left it at that.
But the next morning, Rory's speech and right side symptoms deteriorated badly, just as nurse Tim Griffin returned to work.
I asked what had happened and she said he's just had a massive stroke.
Was this what you had feared?
Yeah, precisely what I'd feared.
A CT scan showed Rory had had multiple strokes while he had been at the Austin. Rory's stroke added brain injury to his already broken body.
The stroke has robbed Rory of his ability to become a functional paraplegic.
A lot of the time it's a bit of a blur because you kind of almost aren't still comfortable about who you are and what you're doing there and all that kind of stuff. But you just accept your lot.
It was just too many mistakes, a 5-day period. There were multiple mistakes that he could have died from any of those occasions. And everyone that works there should know that.
The Austin Hospital has told 7:30 that Mr Wilson was under constant and routine observation. It believes there was no failure in his care and that any earlier intervention would not have changed his medical outcomes. Rory Wilson and his family will never know for sure whether or not his massive stroke could have been avoided. Nurse Tim Griffin believed the hospital may have failed in its duty of care to Rory Wilson and tried to lodge an official report.
What happened when you told your manager you were going to file this incident report?
My manager instructed me not to, and quote, because it may bring medical down upon us.
And what did you take that to mean?
Essentially, that my manager was saying, we don't want any scrutiny, so be quiet.
The manager later told a Fair Work inquiry Tim was instructed not to file an incident report, but was not unfairly pressured. Tim Griffin went ahead and filed the report. Around the same time, he was told there were problems with his performance.
Eventually, there was an incident where my manager started screaming at me on the ward in front of a bunch of witnesses, and I just couldn't handle it.
Tim went on sick leave and complained that his manager had instructed him not to file an incident report. Meanwhile, Rory Wilson needed lifelong care and modifications to his home. They were costs that could only be covered by compensation payments from Victoria's Transport Accident Scheme. His lawyer, Tom Burgoyne, tried to obtain all his patient records from the hospital under freedom of information.
We get to this particular report where the document in its entirety was redacted.
7:30 then showed him Tim Griffin's original report.
The 16th of July, state severe right arm weakness. Should the hospital have released this to you?
In my view, yes. At a minimum, I think as part of open disclosure, Rory ought to have been informed.
The Austin Hospital did not answer 7:30's question about why it did not give Rory Wilson's legal team this information. In December 2015, Tim Griffin's employment at the hospital was terminated. He was diagnosed with PTSD.
I have a very strong sense of justice, I guess, and I felt that we'd done something really bad, as in we, the organisation, and it wasn't right and it needed to be fixed.
And who were you seeking justice for?
Well, for him and for the patient and for future patients.
The Austin Hospital told 7:30 it thoroughly investigated Tim Griffin's claims. However, over the next 3 years, Tim tried to blow the whistle to a series of authorities, including the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency and the Victorian Health Minister. They all told him either the hospital had investigated and found nothing wrong, or this was just a workplace dispute between him and his employer.
I've been in and out of hospital. I'm quite unwell. I've got physical problems and psychological problems. I'm not the person. Sorry, yeah. Can we stop? I've lost faith in the system as such, because it seems like nobody wants to know about it.
Come in, Tim.
After years of legal action, Tim Griffin is finally free to tell Rory Wilson his story. This is the first time they've met since they were nurse and patient 5 years ago.
You're a very, very good man for doing this, you know.
Rory was distressed to learn what had happened to a nurse he couldn't even remember had treated him.
So I just feel in awe of the work that you've done.
When I admitted you on that evening, I was of the opinion that you were going to have a stroke.
Right.
I really believed that to be the case.
And what else do you do with your time?
I think about you every day.
Oh, gosh, that's just too sad.
It's like I've been keeping a secret. So it was good to be able to get it out, and seeing his response was great because he was so pragmatic and so thankful. So that felt good. But yeah, it was tough.
The revelations have shocked Rory and Pauline Wilson. They're now considering suing the hospital.
Certainly from what I've learned today, there's a distinct possibility that would be because of many reasons, not just Rory, but for all the other things involved as well, particularly in light of Tim's situation.
I feel I will always be in his debt in some way or another.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.